Before I move on to the set driven keys, I want to make a control for the elbows, because what I have right now is when I move the arms of the model up, at a certain point they just flip on their own, and I want to be able to control this. I don't want them to flip unless I tell them to. I'm gonna start by making a curve. I have this custom made curve, which is just pretty much a cross that I drew with the EP curve tool. So if I go to my front view, make sure that the curve degree is on linear, display the grid, hold X to snap to grid, and then just draw it based on the snapping on the grid until I get this curve that I have right now. I want to move this curve up and snap it to my elbow joint. Hold V to snap to point. Snapping to the geometry, but I want to snap it to the joint. Snapped. Move it out. Scale it down. And I want to call this my left elbow control. L underscore elbow control. I want to duplicate it. Move the other one to the other side. And this is going to be called the right elbow control. I want to delete history and freeze transformations for both of these. Freeze transformations, delete history. It's very important to have them line up with the joint, because otherwise this elbow is gonna twist towards the front or the back. I only want it to remain on the same plane. I want to select the IK handle for the left arm, so it's the left arm IK, and shift select the elbow control. Go into the animation submenu, go to constraint, pull vector. It's telling me that I can't. Let me try it one more time. Always select the control first, and then the object that has to be controlled. Constraint, pull vector. There it is. I know that it did it because it has this small line. On other versions of Maya, it didn't really matter what you selected first to the constraint, because you can only constrain the IK to the control, but I guess it does now. So what this control is doing is, depending where I have this, the elbow moves according to it. So if I don't want my elbow to bend when I move it up, I would move this control up, and it's always going to remain flexed on that direction unless I move my control past that cross, and that's when it flips. But so if I wanted to move it higher up, and move this up. It just stays flexed down. Well, actually it flipped. But in order to fix that, I just move it in. And there it is. So this is just a control for the elbow. I want to undo, set it back to place. I want to do the same for the right arm. Select the control. Shift select the right arm IK. Constrain. And pull vector. And there's a line indicating that it constrained properly. And the reason why I want it to be on the same plane as the joint is because if this control is a little bit off, what's going to end up happening is that this elbow is going to twist, and I don't want that. I want to parent this somewhere. Let me set this back to 0. And really, you can parent them whatever you want to. I can either parent them to this curve here, to my root control, or to the body joint, or even to the sternum. I think I'll parent them to the root control. I want to group them first though. So select both controls. I'm gonna see my outliner. There's my left elbow control, right elbow control. Press Ctrl G or edit group. I'll call this a elbow group. I want to center pivot. I have my shortcut key, Control P. So center pivot, modify center pivot. And I want to parent this elbow group to, I'll parent it to the sternum. To the sternum. Hit P to parent. So now I have a control for the elbow. And if I want to prevent this from moving on the Z axis, I can highlight my translate C, right click and hold to get this menu, and lock selected. So that way I won't be able to move it anymore. And you can tell that it's locked because whenever I select it, it's grayed out on the channel box. Same for this. Translate C and lock selected. I think I can lock all of these channels too. I'm not going to animate them, so I might as well just lock them, lock selected, and do the same for all of these other channels because they're not going to be moving. So that way now it only moves on X and Y. Well, X and Y. I can set limits to this, but I don't really need to. So now they just move wherever I go. These, depending on how you're going to animate this, can also be parented somewhere. I like the way they're moving because whenever I select the root control, it just makes it look like it has a lot of movement. Almost look like he can dance, but I'll just leave him like that for now. Also, this is gonna be my hip offset. Hip offset. And I want to parent my root control. I'll probably just call it hip control. Or I'll call this hip root offset. Root, hip, whatever. As long as you know what it does, it's okay to name it. So I want to select the root control and parent it to the root offset. I want to make one more curve which is going to be my placement control for the entire rig. I want to make sure it's centered. I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. I'm gonna grab this vertex. These vertices. And pull them out. Make it into a bigger shape, just like this. This will be my placement. Satan underscore placement. Like always, freeze transformations. Doesn't have history. I don't need to delete it. And before I start doing the set driven keys, I'm going to clean up all of this geometry that I have out here. I also want to name it. The hands don't have a name. Everything here is poly surface 65, 68. These groups here, they shouldn't be grouped, so I have to ungroup them. Well, I have to delete the history on everything first. Delete my history. I don't want to freeze transformations yet because all of these things are going to be moved. Also, I want to make sure that nothing is grouped. These legs shouldn't be grouped. So I select both of them, hit Shift P to unparent, and delete this empty group. Whenever there's this white icon with the little red arrow, and there's no plus in there, that means it's an empty group or it's some kind of history. The way I make sure that this doesn't have history on anything is because nothing turns pink. So I can just grab it and delete it. There's just a bunch of stuff that is grouped here. It's a polyplane, but it's not really anything. It doesn't have a plus, so it's just an empty group. So what I'm gonna do now is just clean everything up, so that on the next video I'll finally start working with my different facial expressions, adding the different hands, and just finishing up my rig, I think. Okay.